Week 18 of the fantasy baseball season with the trade deadline in most fantasy leagues this week. Here's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for. Most likely the last chance for owners to go out there and get some of these underwhelming plays on the wire. First hitter, Luis Robert of the Chicago White Sox. So we know this White Sox team just came off losing 21 games in a row, and now they finally won one versus the Oakland Athletics. And Luis Robert last year, 38 and 80. This season's been a down year with injuries and obviously playing on one of the worst teams of all time. 12 home runs, 26 RBIs, 17 stolen bases, 28 runs scored, a 211 average, and a 277 on base. But the last month of the season, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 11 stolen bases, 7 runs scored, a 184 average, and a 237 on base. So pretty much stolen bases is the only thing that Robert's got going for him and fantasy owners right now. But like I said, last season had the monster year. This lineup, there's really no one in there that's protecting Robert. He's getting good pitches to hit, and he's definitely struggling, but he can't be any worse than this. So right now I would send out a deal and see if you get Robert on a discount. August 2nd at Minnesota 0 for 4, August 3rd at Minnesota 0 for 4, August 4th at Minnesota 1 for 5 a run, an RBI, August 5th at Oakland 0 for 4, and August 6th at Oakland 1 for 4 with a run. So like I said, Robert, the last month of the season, he's been non-existent. And with the trade deadline, any day now in most leagues, usually August 8th, August 9th, this deadline is. You got to go out there and try to make that one last push to make the playoffs with only a few weeks left in the regular season. So while Robert hasn't done much, and we know the potential, I know he's not going to put up the numbers or go on a tear like he did last season for the remainder of the year, but someone who can help fantasy owners and you pay a minimum price. This week, the next hitter, JT Realmuto of the Philadelphia Phillies. So an injury-riddled year it's been for Realmuto. He's been one of the better catchers in the last decade on the season. 7 home runs, 21 RBIs, 32 runs scored, a stolen base, a 250 average, and a 310 on base. And he's been back now over the last month as Realmuto, 8 for 41 in that time. No home runs, 1 RBI, 4 runs scored, a 195 average, and a 313 on base. So Realmuto, we know his batting average hasn't been great over the last few seasons, but power numbers he hasn't brought, and he's not driving runs in. And I think I could get him on a discount. Like I said, Realmuto's been back just about a month now from the injured list, and he's mightily struggled. And it's a perfect buy low hitter this week. August 2nd in Seattle, 1 for 3. August 3rd at Seattle, 0 for 5. August 4th at Seattle, 1 for 4, an RBI. And August 6th versus the Dodgers, 0 for 3 with a run. So this Philly team, they've struggled mightily over the last month of the season. Realmuto, they hope, gets going. Bryce Harper, he's been slowing down as well of late. But I just believe JT Realmuto, I know with the injuries and stuff, but I believe in one season he's just not going to lose it that quickly. I know he's getting there in age a little bit as JT Realmuto, but still power and RBIs I expect him to bring. And right now, while he hasn't done much of that at all, I would go out there and try to make a deal for him because we know catch is one of the weakest positions in the league. And if he gets hot for a little bit as Realmuto, he could pay big dividends for fantasy owners the remainder of the season. Next hitter, Christopher Morel of the Tampa Bay Rays. So the Rays traded Isaac Paredes, got Morel and a couple prospects in the deal at the deadline a couple weeks ago. And on the season for Morel, 20 home runs, 53 RBIs, 46 runs scored, 7 stolen bases, a 195 average, and a 302 on base. So Morel, he's pretty much a home run walk or a strikeout. He's the prototypical power hitter where at least last season he hit 247. This year under the Mendoza line, and he's even out there in 26% of fantasy leagues. So you could get him on a nice discount, but I like the versatility, second, third, and outfield. He's more of a points league type of play as Morel with his power. In the last month of the season, like I said, it's pretty much just been a home run and nothing else. 5 home runs, 7 RBIs, 8 runs scored, 179 average, and a 295 on base. So from going Wrigley Field to the Trop, I don't think it's a huge difference. It's a small ballpark over there at Tropicana Field in Tampa Bay. And I know Wrigley in the summer, that ball carries, the wind blows out to left field and all that. But Christopher Morel, I think in this lineup in Tampa Bay, even though they gutted a majority of their great players on the roster, he could still hit the baseball and he could help fantasy owners. So qualifying second, third, and outfield. And if you need pure power, like I said, you don't have to give up much, maybe a back-end pitcher on your roster to get Morel this week. In the last few games for Morel, July 31st versus Miami, 1 for 4, a homer in that one, an RBI. August 2nd in Houston, 0 for 2. August 3rd in Houston, 0 for 3. August 6th at the Cardinals 0 for 4, so he's slumping mightily. Christopher Morel, I don't think you got to give up much to get him in a deal. Maybe a back-end starter in your rotation who you possibly picked up off the waiver wire, because many people are frustrated this year with Morel that his batting average has dropped over 50 points on the year, even though the power numbers are still solid. I believe 20 on the season, where he has an outside shot of finishing with 30, where last year he went 26 and 70. I believe he could pass those benchmarks. And like I said, Tropicana Field is a good hitter's ballpark as well. I know it might not be better than Wrigley Field, but it's not like it's a major downgrade. The only thing lesser of a lineup he's in, but I still will go out there and get Christopher Morel, and I think he'll pay off better in points leagues than category leagues or roto leagues for the remainder of the season. Next hitter, Wyatt Langford of the Texas Rangers. So a lot of hype coming into the season about Wyatt Langford, and injuries and just poor play have done him in this year, where a lot of people were high on him coming in to the year, and he's gone high in fantasy drafts, like 6th, 7th round. I saw in some mocks. Season after tearing it up in spring training, we haven't seen much at all. 6 home runs, 44 RBIs, 9 stolen bases, 37 runs scored, a 240 average, and a 306 on base in the last month. 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 9 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 153 average, and a 215 on base. So Wyatt Langford, the month of June, he was starting to turn things around a little bit, show some power, steal some bases. He even hit for the cycle in one ball game, but ever since then, he's slumping mightily, and we know this Texas Ranger team, they're out of it unless they go on a crazy run. But there's 6 games under 500 is this Texas Ranger team. So Langford, the last few games, July 30th at the Cardinals, 1 for 4 homer and RBI. July 31st at the Cardinals, 0 for 4. August 2nd versus Boston, 0 for 3. August 5th versus Houston, 0 for 3. And August 6th versus Houston, 0 for 3. So Langford pretty much non-existent over the last month of the season in terms of putting up numbers. He's out there in 24% of fantasy leagues. But I believe Langford, with this Texas Ranger team out of it, and obviously he's still going to get playing time, he can maybe get things going in the remainder of August and September to help fantasy owners. I know he's definitely been a bust, especially if you're one of those fantasy owners that went out there and drafted him in those early rounds, really taking him way over ADP. But I still believe Wyatt Langford has upside. Like I said, with the pressure off, is he going to get opportunities to see what the Rangers have for next season? I think Langford could start to find something in the next month and a half of the season and can help fantasy owners. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and put up the huge numbers, but I believe he could be contributing, and he's just got to get things going to get on a discount or virtually one of the last players on your roster to take a chance on someone who's still young in his upside. By Langford this week in the 5th and final hitter, I will combine Owen Arenado of the St. Louis Cardinals. I believe Arenado all season, when I've been doing these buy lists, has been on it a majority of the time. And now with the last one of the year, with the trade deadline coming up August 8th, August 9th, in most fantasy leagues here, Arenado for one last time will be on the buy list. And I know his better days are behind him, is Nolan Arenado. Same with Paul Goldschmidt of the St. Louis Cardinal team on the season. 11 home runs, 48 RBIs, a stolen base, 45 runs scored, a 265 average, and a 318 on base. And over the last month, the numbers aren't totally horrible. 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, 13 runs scored, a 250 average, and a 305 on base. Arenado, he was drafted 4th, 5th round range in most fantasy drafts this season. And last year, at least he showed power, and he still had the good RBIs, 26 and 93. But this year, 11 and 48. I think 20 and 85 is a stretch for Nolan Arenado. So we know he had those monster years, obviously, over there in Colorado, where the numbers are inflated. But even with the St. Louis Cardinals, he had some productive years. And like I said, he's up there in age now. Maybe his best days are behind him, is Nolan Arenado. But I believe this Cardinal team, they're 3 out of the wild card spot. He's going to go on a little bit of a tear to try to boost him up and get one last shot to get a wild card spot, because we still got, it's about 45 to 50 game range left in the season here. And I think Nolan Arenado, he hasn't been as bad as people thought. I know the power and the RBIs are down, but his batting average is the same as his last season. His on-base percentage is 3 points higher, and even his strikeout rate is a little bit down from last year on pace. If he could just show some power, is Arenado, and get the RBIs up, I think his numbers could be similar to last year, but I don't believe he's going to hit 15 home runs in the next 2 months. And the RBIs, I don't believe he'll reach. But if he could go on a nice little tear over the next few weeks as Arenado, he could help fantasy owners and this Cardinal team make that final push for a wild card spot. August 3rd at the Cubs, 2-for-4, 2 RBIs. August 4th at the Cubs, 1-for-4. August 5th versus the Mets, 1-for-4. And August 6th versus Tampa, 1-for-4. So right now, while Arenado pretty much hasn't done much, like I said, especially in RBIs and home runs, that's where the problem's been with him this season, because the average and on base is the same or better than last year. He's a buy low hitter this week, and he just needs one big month, I believe, where he can help fantasy owners and be a big buy at the deadline. So that's a few hitters I look to buy and trade for with the deadline this week in most fantasy leagues for Week 18 of the fantasy baseball season.